So the real sounds of Africa as ever to kick off the World Football phone-in this morning. It's Africa, South America and North America. So welcome to the show. Real Sounds of Africa, soccer fans, the name of the track. I know you all love it. We're talking football in North America, South America and in Africa. And, of course, on players from over there playing in our leagues as well. If you'd like to join us this morning, the number to call is 0500 909 693, 0500 909 693, with your comments, questions and thoughts on football in any of those regions, and indeed on the social life, the impact of football in those regions too. Pick up the phone, give me a call. You can text me on 85058 or email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. I say me, it's a team effort here, and in the North American contingent is represented by Sean Wheelock, the Big Wheel. Good morning, mate.
Good morning to you, Dot. And you know, this is a big week because on Thursday, the 14th ever season of MLS, Major League Soccer, begins. And also there's a lot of talk going around that David Beckham doesn't want to be a footballer in MLS. He wants to be a club owner. So I'll dispel a lot of the rumors, the unfounded rumors going around over the next 90 minutes.
What we'd really like to know is how much cash did he have to pay to get himself out of the contract? But we'll come to that in a moment. South America is represented by our legend Dino, Tim Vickery. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. I've just seen Frost Nixon a couple of days ago, so I think it has to be the old hello, good evening, and welcome.
Well done. Nice. You know that somebody will use that and put it together as a theme tune.
Well, that's the risk we run every time we open our mouths these days, isn't it?
You asked for that. In the studio here with me, the Uxbridge Massive, also known as Hiral Bat, our African football correspondent. Good morning to you, Hiral.
Morning, everybody.
So let's fire off straight away. We've got calls waiting, we've got text messages waiting, and we've got emails too. Any questions that you might have on football in North America, South America, or on Africa, or indeed on players from over there playing in our leagues, then pick up the phone and give me a call, 0500 909 693. Ross is in Portsmouth. Good morning, Ross.
Good evening, Don.
Good evening to you.
All right, just one thing. If Charlton go down and there's a fire sale of their players,
Here we go.
Need any players?
Here we go. Go on.
I manage a team called Villarreal. Well, I've just finished managing them. I've got a few Charlton fans as players, including the brilliant Geraldo. He's a holding midfielder who could do a job for you.
Listen, mate, we might need him, so tell him to put his kit on and get ready to be called on at any moment.
Yeah, the Villarreal boys are with you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Around lots of texts. Let me just say very quickly, Ross, Simon in Devon wrote me a really nice letter, but it says he can't help taking the mickey, and of course today he's taking the mickey out of it for Charlton going down as well. So bring it on. I'm up for any jokes. They've got to be good, though.
Yeah, well, there you go. All right, I've got a question for Tim.
Go ahead.
All right, well, as a football manager, this is quite interesting to me. What is the typical Argentinian style of football, would you say? And if I wanted to set up a team to play a sort of Argentinian style of football, what would be the key components I would need?
This is going to be a big oversimplification because there are different tactics and different styles that are used in Argentina. But the standard one would be a 4-4-2 with a diamond midfield. And the key man would be that man at the head of the diamond who'd be your number 10 figure, who'd be he's the king of the team, and he'd be looking to slot in the passes. And exactly the role that Riquelme plays. And one of the things that makes Riquelme such an important figure is that he represents a whole history of Argentine football, of that particular style of player, and his fight with Maradona, which I'm sure we'll get into. Someone will ask about it over the hour and a half. Is very serious because that type of player, the foot on the ball playmaker, it's so important to the tradition of Argentine football, but it's a position that under the stress and the strains of the modern game is being squeezed a little bit. So Riquelme perhaps is one of a dying breed, but it's very important in the philosophy of Argentinian football. And very often the positions in Argentinian football they're just referred to by the numbers. So if you say someone who plays as an 8, that means he's a right-sided midfielder on that diamond. If you say someone plays as the 5, that means he's a holding midfielder, the kind of Mascherano-type player. So that would be your basic tactical structure, the 4-4-2 with a diamond midfield. Can I now reverse the polarity and ask you a quick question, Ross?
Yeah.
Now, I finished an article late last night, exactly on the Riquelme Maradona thing for a client in Australia, and it was late night, and I just wanted to kind of switch off and that, and I turned the TV on, and just by chance, I caught a film. It's called A Shot at Glory, with Robert Duvall playing a Scottish football manager. I want to know, I'd never heard of it, and Ali McCoist is in it, and Duvall keeps up this "I, the new" for 2 hours in a film. I just wanted to know what people in Scotland thought of his take on a Scottish football manager.
Oh no, they thought it was terrible. Like, I haven't really seen it, but my dad has, and he just thought it was a cheese fest. Complete cheese fest.
We need to see that. Gosh, I hope it's out on DVD.
I'm not sure. It might be on Love Film, I'm not sure. I'll give it a check.
I look forward to it. And then make sure you come back on if you do find it on DVD anyway. Ross, thanks very much. 0500 909 693. Question for Sean. This is from Stephen in Newcastle. What can you tell me about the MLS soccer team in Miami? I'm going there next week. Would like to check out their ground, etc. Would like a bit of background.
There isn't an MLS team in Miami. I'm sorry to tell you. There's a second division side. They're called Miami FC Blues. They play, although it's a bit tenuous because I've heard, and I'm not breaking any news here, that they're financially in a lot of trouble. They have a goal to sell 5,000 season tickets. That's a pretty good number for an MLS side. Most second division sides in the U.S. and Canada would be happy to sell about 1,500 season tickets. They're owned by a Brazilian company called Traffic. Now, this is the side, Tim, you know very well. Who did they bring in 2 years ago to this side?
They had a little spell with Romario. He played there for a while.
That's exactly right.
And I think that Zinho does something with him now. Zinho, who was the left-sided midfielder when Brazil won the World Cup in '94, I think he's still there in some capacity.
He's an assistant coach. That's exactly right. And if you recall, Dalton, that Tim and I talked about this somewhat laughingly 2 years ago because this was the quest for 1,000 goals, and he was determined to get it anyway, including playing in the American Second Division. Now, what you may have heard is that MLS, until last week, was actually courting Miami. Barcelona, yes, the Barcelona, was looking to partner up with a group in Miami to bring in what's called an expansion club, an expansion franchised MLS. That has collapsed, so for the foreseeable future, Miami is out of contention to get an MLS side. The U.S.-Canadian Second Division is pretty good. I think it's probably a little better than League Two in England, but certainly on a Friday or a Sunday night, those are usually the two nights that they play in the U.S.-Canadian Second Division. It would be worth checking out. That's assuming that Miami can actually get it going. It's a bit tenuous at the moment. They did have a club called Miami Fusion, which began in 1998, and they folded after the 2001 season. What really hurt them is that they played in an American football high school, like a senior school stadium. It was an absolute disaster. They were in the wrong part of town. They didn't go after the Haitian community or the Colombian community or the Cubans or the Puerto Ricans or the Dominicans or the Argentines. Miami is such this wonderful cultural stew of Latins and Hispanics, from not just the Caribbean but Central America, South America coming through. You have all these Caribbean people as well, and the original Miami club in MLS, Miami Fusion, basically ignored all of them, and that's why the club didn't do very well. So it would be a great city for MLS. They just haven't been able to put it together, and the situation with Barcelona is completely dead.
Gerald, as you can see, I'm doing, you being in the studio, I'm doing my Ronaldo impersonation here in the studio. You can see that, can't you? Anyway, there is a question for you, African football-wise, because this person was a Nigerian international at some point, so one of our listeners wants to know whatever happened to Efin Okoku.
Well, I mean, I can't really tell you what he's doing now, but, I mean, that would be something probably our listeners would be able to help us on, perhaps.
Right, so we put out an APB. If anybody knows whatever happened to Efin Okoku, you might be able to answer one of the questions tonight. Bira in Sheffield, good morning.
Good morning, Dalton. Yeah, on the Efin Okoku front, he appeared on the Five Live show Fighting Talk. It kind of been more than a month ago, actually.
Totally surreal. I didn't know that you were going to say that, did I? Because people might think that was a setup.
Yeah.
I asked a question, APB's over, guys. Bira's answered the question. I think I remember him now that you say that, yeah. What was he talking about?
It's just the Fighting Talk's a show where they ask sort of sporting questions and they try to sort of crack jokes about it. But it's a fun show, and he was okay on it, yeah.
You don't remember if he said explained or told people what he was doing now?
No, I don't think that was mentioned at all, no.
Okay, and your question?
I have two questions, one to Tim and one to Sean. the first attempt, it was about Gary Medel, who plays for Universidad Católica in Chile, yeah. And I was just wondering, but since he's been featuring prominently in the Chilean national team, with his due a move to Europe anytime soon.
He's a very, very interesting player. He's known as the pit bull, and you look at him physically, and he looks like a pit bull with tiny, tiny little legs and a big head, and he bites as well. You can play him either in the midfield, central midfield, or you can play him in defensive line. And Chile have played him in both positions. He's a little bit short for a centre back. He's a little guy, but very neat in possession. Tackles very fiercely. There is a problem with him though, which is his wild child antics. And he's only a kid, and he's early 20s, but he's been involved in just all sorts. His nightclub incidents, car smashes. There was a woman who died in his apartment recently, I think last month or something, in circumstances which are a little bit strange. So I think were it not for that, he might already have moved. A number of Argentinian clubs were thinking of taking him on this season, and that didn't happen. So if he can overcome these kind of wild child behaviour patterns, then there's certainly a player there. And Marcelo Bielsa, the highly rated Chile coach, thinks he's a real prospect. Is being patient with him. Thinks that these are just the excesses of youth that Medel is going through. But certainly a name to look for. A very, very interesting player indeed.
Pierre, does that answer your question?
Yes, to move on to my next question, it was about...
you got a next one?
Yeah, it was to Sean about the coaching. How are the young players in America coached? Because it seems that a country like Australia, with like 10th in population of America, has more players who are stamping their authority, like in leagues like Turkey or in England. The players, certainly Australian players, who in better shape than the US players are in Europe. Where are the US coaches getting it wrong?
This is a brilliant question. We have 69 minutes left on the program. I could take about 169 minutes, and I would still have plenty more to say on this. I'll try to be fairly brief, although any long-time listeners of the show know that's probably not going to happen.
Just stick to MLS, yeah?
I really love that question. Here's what's so frustrating for me is a Yank who absolutely, obviously, as anyone listens to the show knows, is so passionate, is so in love with the sport of football. Football, I'm talking soccer now, not American football. Football is the number 2 participation sport for children, boys, girls, teenagers, age 5 all the way to age 16. For boys, girls, men, women, males, females. Number 2 in the entire country. 305 million people in this country. Number 2 only to basketball. That's more participation than golf, than ice hockey, than baseball, than American football. Yes, believe it or not, even more than baseball and American football. So where does it go wrong? I've said on this program before, if there was an under-8 World Cup, the U.S. would win it every single time in both the male and female category. The problem is that to be an athlete as a young person, male or female in the U.S., when you get to about 10 or 11 years old, you have to make a choice. Now, someone of my mom's generation who went to high school in the 1950s, 1960s, you could be a multi-sport athlete. You could play baseball and run track, and you could play American football. No one was really kicking a football or soccer ball around then. You could do all of these sorts of things. Now, there is so much pressure and so much money going into youth sport in the United States and Canada, for that matter. You have to make a choice. If you're going to be a footballer, you basically have to play football 11 months out of the year. That means you're not going to play baseball, you're not going to ride bikes, you're not going to go to movies, you're not going to play video games. A lot of kids, male and female, are just not willing to make that sacrifice. And also because MLS is still an emerging league. As I was saying at the top of the program, the 14th ever season of MLS begins on Thursday. 14 isn't a long time. This league started in 1996, April of 1996. There are still millions and millions of kids kicking a football around who think, well, it's going to end for me once I finish high school. Maybe I can get a college scholarship, but I'm never going to be a professional. And if I am, I'm not going to make a lot of money. There are so many MLS players, really good MLS players, that make under $80,000 US a year. You know, $80,000 isn't a bad wage for a 22-year-old until you see what 22-year-old footballers are making in a country like England. And then that's about their weekly salary. there has to be they have to stop this disconnect of being a very good footballer when you're 8 to when you're 18 to completely abandoning the sport by the time you're 20. I don't know exactly if you can say that the blame falls in one area. I think it falls in all of the areas because we're clearly turning out football players. You know, I've said this many times on the program. The United States is a nation of football players. It's not a nation of football supporters, and that has to change culturally. So many kids, when you look around on a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon, are kicking footballs around, boys and girls, all the way from little kids, 4 or 5 years old, up to teenagers, and then it stops. You don't see a lot of over 30 leagues. It's really shocking how it just completely drops off. If the United States can ever really harvest what they have from all of these great 10-year-olds and convert them into really good professionals, that's when the U.S. is going to win the World Cup.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the call, Bira. I don't know if this is true. This is for Pat in Nottingham, who asked a question about FN Okoku. Apparently, Scott, who's an Aldi driver in Aberdeen, says, I saw FN working in HMV Edinburgh. Now, that's not official. He might have just been working as one of those celebrity guests. I'm not quite sure. And also, with regards to Robert Duvall, Tim, Ian in Glasgow says he's seen the DVD. He got it online, apparently. All the players in the team were professional footballers. That's what really irks him, because Robert Duvall sounded like an Irishman. Anyway, question for you. Uxbridge Massive, we're talking African football now. Dan in Finsbury Park wants to know, are ASEC Abidjan, how are they doing in Ivory Coast? Are they still producing great players?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually an interesting story at the moment, because recently we've had the first ever Championship of African Nations, a sort of a local tournament for players based locally within Africa. And Ivory Coast did absolutely horribly. And, you know, obviously players feeding in from the academies in such as ASEC Abidjan's academy, you know, don't seem to have done too well in sort of a tournament that was geared towards their participation. But as far as players go, yeah, I mean, it's still one of the best academies in Africa, and you see the players that come through at youth level, under 20 level, are still of exceptional standard. And actually, ASEC Abidjan traditionally underachieve a little bit in the Champions League, but have done pretty well in the last round, in the last tournament. Sorry, and everyone's looking to them to do the same thing this time round. The Champions League matches kick off very shortly. So they're up there, but perhaps underachieve a little bit.
Still more text on the Shot of Glory starring Robert Duvall. Ronnie in Kilmarnock says it is out on DVD, confirms. Says, my local team, Kilmarnock, was involved in the filming and I spent 7 hours in the ground as one of the crowd. It isn't too cheesy. You're going to have to come on and convince us about that, mate. Cleo in Aldershot, good morning.
Good morning, Dotton. Good morning, Tim. Good morning, Sean. Dotton, what would you do for comic relief? I've just seen Martin Afire do a very good full Monty.
As I said earlier, and nobody picks up on this, I am actually doing my Ronaldo impression in the studio today.
Oh, I'll have to have a look on the webcam. Anyway, a question for Haral. How is the Angola's 2010 African Cup of Nations preparations going? For Sean, Mr. Blatter, who's my favourite friend, the chap that says to make women's football more sexy as she wears short. Well, this week he's been saying that the MLS should really think about changing their season. The fact that they ground share with American football, the gridiron one, is by the by. They need to be up with the rest of Europe. What do you think of that? And for Tim, I'm so sad about Riquelme. I could see his differences. He says he hears from the media that he's not in the squad, that Maradona wants him to play out of position. But I'm hoping that in 2006 he said he retired and he came back again.
So let's take Hiral first of all then.
I think overall good. I mean, Angola itself is a country really on the rise. Their infrastructure, across the board has been improving greatly over the last 5-10 years, obviously, since the Civil War ended. And their preparations are going well. I mean, they had a few difficulties recently, I think, with labor disputes and the like. But overall, they should be ready, and it should be a pretty interesting tournament because you're having the Nations Cup go back to South Africa. Obviously, where there's a very passionate football following, and with Angola's recent emergence as a force in Africa and perhaps even globally in the long run. it looks to be an interesting place to have the tournament.
And Sean, the MLS to change their season?
Sepp Blatter says a lot of outrageous things. Not this time. He is absolutely right. MLS, unfortunately, plays this reverse schedule. They're afraid to play through winter. The new campaign, again, starts on Thursday. It will conclude with the MLS Cup Final November 22nd. They have a very, very long close season. They don't honor FIFA international dates. In their history, they've already played through World Cups 98, 2002, 2006. They'll probably play through World Cup 2010, again, having the unfortunate distinction being the only top flight in the entire world to not shut down, to continue to play during the World Cup. They need to sort it out. This excuse of, well, we're hampered in by these stadiums, it's not legitimate anymore. 15 clubs in MLS, just 4 actually ground share with an American football side, 3 in the NFL, 1 in college football. Sepp Blatter got this right, Cleo.
Although, Sean, you know what would happen if the MLS changed their season? They wouldn't get the likes of David Beckham wanting to sort of go there and share with Italy as well.
Oh, he's not coming back. We still have a lot to talk about with Beckham.
So he's not coming back at all?
I don't believe so.
Oh, gosh. Oh, God, that comes as a surprise to me. I wonder how many millions that cost him then. We'll find out, of course. 0500 909 693. We're talking North American, South American and African football. How much money do you reckon he paid?
On DAB Digital Radio, Digital TV, downloads and BBC iPlayer.
This is 5 Live.
3 o'clock, good morning. Michaela Howard has the 5 Live News.
A taxi driver described as one of Britain's most prolific sex attackers has been convicted of drugging and assaulting 12 women in the back of his black cab. John Warboys from South East London plied his passengers with alcohol spiked with sedatives. Detectives believe he may have attacked more than 80 women in the London area. One of his victims says she's now too scared to get into any taxi on her own.
I wouldn't go into a black cab or any cab alone. I'd make sure I've got someone with me when I'm walking home. I'm very cautious about what I drink if I'm out, and it's just sort of heightened my awareness, I guess, to what could possibly happen.
A third person has been arrested over the murder of a police officer who was shot dead in Northern Ireland on Monday. PC Stephen Carroll's funeral was held yesterday in his hometown of Banbridge in County Down. A prayer vigil will be held this afternoon outside the Masserine Barracks in Antrim. It's a week since 2 soldiers were shot dead there in an attack by dissident Republican gunmen. Finance ministers from the world's leading economies are meeting in West Sussex this weekend to try to agree how to tackle the global economic downturn. The gathering will lay the groundwork for the G20 summit in 3 weeks' time. Niels Blythe reports.
Serious negotiation will take place about refinancing the International Monetary Fund, which helps the most distressed economies and is likely to run short of money quite soon. There'll also be detailed discussions about banking bailouts and regulation. America is keen to see all the G20 countries increase public spending to ward off recession, but has pulled back from trying to set specific targets for this so-called fiscal stimulus.
The Immigration Minister Phil Wooler said protesters forced their way into his constituency office in Oldham yesterday evening, briefly trapping him inside. The activists were members of the Manchester No Borders group, who oppose immigration controls and the detention of illegal immigrants. Simultaneous concerts have been held in Melbourne and Sydney to raise money for the victims of Australia's bushfires. 210 people died and around 10,000 were left homeless by the fires in the state of Victoria in February. Some of the money will also go to those affected by extensive flooding in Queensland last month. Organisers of Comic Relief say they've raised nearly £58 million so far, the most in its history. The money will go towards helping disadvantaged people in the UK and Africa. Carol Vorderman is one of the 10 celebrities who took part in a special apprentice show. She said it was great to be involved.
It's just fantastic. 21 years. I can't believe that. I don't have that kind of memory of Comic Relief going back that far. But it's because, obviously, primarily it's because you laugh and you do something funny for money and you have a great time, but you're doing something good at the same time. That primarily is what it is. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's fantastic.
That was Carol Vorderman. Ben Jacobs now has the sport.
Thanks, Michaela Couto. Star is the first horse to regain the Cheltenham Gold Cup. He beat stablemate Denman to win a thrilling race. Victorious jockey Ruby Walsh called Couto the greatest horse he's ever ridden. It's Walsh's 7th win at the festival. That's a feat that hasn't been bettered. To cricket, and England's women have set New Zealand 202 to win their Super Sixes match in Bankstown. Alison Mitchell has the latest.
Over of New Zealand's reply was a maiden from Catherine Brunt. New Zealand now 6 without loss in the 4th over. England recovered from 96 for 4 to post their 201 for 5, 57 from captain Charlotte Edwards, and a late flurry from Beth Morgan and Jenny Gunn, which included a straight 6 from Gunn back over the bowler's head. New Zealand 6 without loss in the 4th.
Alison, thank you. Back with Alison in Australia every half an hour here on Up All Night. The Liverpool boss, Rafa Benitez, says there'll be no bad blood between him and Sir Alex Ferguson, despite his fierce rant against the Manchester United manager. The pair meet at Old Trafford today. That's a game that you can hear in 5 Live Sport at 12:45. Liverpool start 7 points adrift, and they really do need to win to keep their title hopes alive. Leicester Tigers top Rugby Union's Premiership after a 23-17 win at struggling Bristol. In Super League, there were wins for the leaders Leeds and St Helens. And Andy Murray's back from illness with a win. He and doubles partner Ross Hutchins won their opening match at the ATP Masters 1000 event in Indian Wells.
Ben, any idea what Efe Nkoku is doing with his time nowadays?
He was coaching.
Well, he was coaching, yeah?
He was playing actually down in Chelmsford in the Sunday League, I think for Braintree United.
Are you sure about this?
As a player coach. This was a few years back.
Right. A lot could have happened in those few years.
A lot can happen in a few years.
Pat in Nottingham wants to know what's happened to him. And we've had put out an APB, an All Points Bulletin. We've had lots of sightings of him up and down the country. We've got Babs in Bedford saying that I saw Effin working on the Dodgem cars at the local fair. And Stuart in Hinckley says there's a guy who works in our chip shop, swears he's Efe Nkoku. I'm not sure. Maybe he's had several jobs since he was last.
Well, he was
coaching.
in that last generation, wasn't he, of footballers that didn't get enough money necessarily to make a living.
Enough. So he could be owning a sweet shop somewhere. I'm not taking the mickey.
Could be in a local chippy near you.
Yeah, Dixie Dean ended up owning a sweet shop. Really sad.
And who knows what you'll do when you retire.
Yes, I'll work for the rest of my life in that case. Ben, thanks very much. 0500 909 693 is the number to join us for our World Football phone-in. This morning it's North America, South America and Africa. So any questions or comments you might have on football in any of those regions, or indeed on players from over there, pick up the phone, give us a call, 0500 909 693. You can text us, of course, as many of you have already. 85058 is our text number. Email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. In the studio with me here, the Uxbridge Massive, our African football correspondent, Hiral Bat, and in the States, for the big wheel, taking care of anything to do with North America Major League Soccer, is Sean Wheelock, and in Rio, our South American football expert, Tim Vickery, the Legendino, the Wikipedia, as you might know him if you're a Yank. Now, 0500 909 693. We've got Stanley, Peter and Steve waiting to come on. Let's take Stanley first of all, though, in Islington. Good morning. Oh, sorry, before we go to you, Stanley, I do apologise, because there was a third part of Cleo and Aldershot's question. I do apologise, Stanley. It's for you, Tim. It's about Riquelme. And actually, Stanley, you may as well ask this, because you want to talk about Riquelme anyway.
Yeah. I was just going to follow on from Cleo. I was going to ask 3 questions. I'll just lead on to Tim first. What's the reaction been to Riquelme and his retirement? And is Daniel Montenegro really the answer for Argentina to replace Riquelme? The second question would be to Sean. It's about youth football as well in the United States. This documentary that I listened to on Radio 4 BBC, and they're saying that there is a lot of bureaucracy between trying to get to have a kickabout in the park on Sundays in America, and that Obama's child had to go through a lot of bureaucracy to register to play. Is that true? And to Hiral, there are, at my last count, there are about 9 international tournaments in Africa. The last you just mentioned, the African Championships. We've already had the Youth Championships in East Africa already this year. Do you think this is one too many international tournaments altogether?
Well, we'll come on to those other questions. Let's take Tim first of all, though, the Riquelme issue. Perhaps you could answer both Stanley's point and also Cleo and Aldershot's.
Yeah, sure. Very sad for lovers of Riquelme, because I think that this is it. I don't think there's any chance of him coming back to play for Argentina, especially while Maradona's the coach, because There are in Maradona's book. I don't think there's a crime bigger than retiring from the Argentinian national team. So I think the door is closed unless Riquelme comes up with a grovelling apology for pulling out, which is very unlikely. It's a situation that I think doesn't reflect particularly well on either of them. Riquelme is so thin-skinned. He's the kind of guy who needs to be made to feel important all the time. He must feel that he's vital to the team, and he's being defended by the coach, and that was why he pulled out briefly of the Argentinian national team just after the World Cup. The coach there, Basili, refused to confirm him as captain, and Riquelme tucked the ball under his arm and wandered off into the sunset, but was coaxed back. There'll be no coaxing back this time because Maradona is not Basili. Maradona will take a harder line on this. So Riquelme is so thin-skinned and doesn't take criticism very well. He's an awkward character to deal with. Maradona has lost a player that he did want to call up and he did want to put in his team. And the problem of Maradona is that he gives opinions and opinions and opinions. He loves to give opinions, but it's different now. He's a national team coach, and his opinions on Argentinian players have consequences. What Maradona said was really he was criticising Riquelme's recent performances for Boca, and he was saying, well, that kind of Riquelme, that's no good to me. Not physically fit enough, he's playing too deep, I want him to play 20 yards further up the field, so that kind of Riquelme, that's no good to me. And that was a conversation that should have taken place privately, and not over the media, because Maradona should have known that Riquelme is going to react sensitively to these criticisms, and so the end consequence is that Maradona has lost a player who was important to his conception of building a side. Stanley asked there if the understudy, Daniel Rolfi Montenegro of Independiente, is likely to be good enough to step up to the plate, and well, my answer to that, my hunch on that is just a resounding no. Montenegro is a guy who's 30 this month. He's never given any sign that he's a player who's capable of tipping the balance at the highest level. That position, the playmaker position, I think is a difficult one to play in these days with the physical development of the game. And I can't see any possibility of Montenegro as a long-term solution for Argentina. What I wonder might happen is, and Maradona doesn't want this, but it might be his way out, is that Leo Messi might have to drop a little bit and take on more playmaking responsibilities. And maybe the only positive side of that for Argentina is that if you do that, that might help create space in a side for a number 9, a target man centre forward, which Argentina have been missing since the decline of Hernan Crespo. There aren't that many sides who can play without penalty area presence, and it could well be that a player of that type might help bring out the best in the little guys, in the likes of Aguero and Messi and maybe Tevez as well. But it's an unfortunate situation where Riquelme's sensitivity and Maradona's tendency to just go into overdrive whenever a microphone is put in front of him has meant that Argentina have lost a terrific player, and that really wasn't what Maradona had intended.
Uxbridge Massive, one too many tournaments in Africa.
Oh, it's a great observation, really. You have these localized tournaments in Africa, which you don't really have in Europe. You have the CACAFA Cup, which was held recently. You have the COSAFA Cup, that being for Southern Africa, the CACAFA Cup being for Eastern Africa. But I personally don't think so. I really like the idea of this Championship of African Nations. I mean, there are some players in it who are not necessarily local based as such. I mean, they've had time abroad or are based in other leagues, but I like the idea of it. I mean, when it was first introduced, or the idea was first introduced, I mean, people in Africa were pretty skeptical. I mean, the footballing authorities in Africa were pretty skeptical about it, and it didn't look like it was really going to have any kind of major impact on the African football scene. But you can't say that now. I mean, just tell the 1 million people who lined the streets of Kinshasa to welcome back the victorious Congo team, and the fact that the tournament has really been taken to heart in a country like Congo just goes to show you that there's still a place for this kind of thing in Africa. And I think the idea is good because obviously Africa and Europe have a slightly different sort of structure in terms of where their players play. Obviously, most African players who play international football don't actually play in Africa. So, and very often you find that the international teams' friendlies aren't played in Africa either, barring, of course, qualifying. So, the more international football that can be seen by African football supporters, with players based in their, local areas, local countries, is a good thing for me, I think. It remains to be seen how this will work in the long term, because obviously with this many tournaments, there's bound to be some sort of backlash in terms of players and teams getting involved.
Apparently, Effen Okoku worked as a pundit for the BBC at the 2008 African Nations Cup, and since then he's been quoted in the Metro newspaper saying, I've had lots of media work both here and in Nigeria, but it's not been that regular, so I've had plenty of time to do my own thing as well. I also have some business interests. I've set up a soccer school for 15 to 18-year-olds in Nigeria, Future Football in Lagos. So
he's a pretty good commentator, to be honest. Pretty good pundit. I mean, perhaps a bit more work in that line.
So he's probably not the guy who's working the London Chippy then?
Unless they have a special 2-for-1 offer,
And Sean, on that note, Obama's daughters can't get a kickabout in the park if they want?
Well, there are a couple of ways that you can play football on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon. Now, unless you live in an urban area, and in Los Angeles, which isn't really an urban area despite being the second most populous city in the U.S., still has a lack of football pitches. But by and large, the United States has done a nice job of isolating green space, what we call it parks. Now, your football pitch might double as, well, a baseball diamond, or might be used for American football, but you have an area most likely in the vast majority of places in the United States that you can find that. I think what this question really is about is this pay-for-play concept in the United States. To play football as a child, your parents are going to spend an awful lot of money. The better you are, the better your club is, the more money you're going to have to pay. You try out to be on these elite clubs, to travel to different tournaments, not just throughout the United States, but actually out of the country, and your parents are paying for that privilege. So it's a very heavily regulated system. Going back to the great question in the first third of the show about the youth development in football, a lot of people who work at the professional level will tell you that the fault really lies with this all-powerful, all-encompassing youth football system. It's controlled by people who do not have the sport and really don't have the children's best interest at heart. It's a very, very difficult situation if you come from an underprivileged background where your parents maybe just don't have $2,000 to get you in an 8-week league, or yes, you're good enough to be selected to play on a side that's going to travel to Mexico, but your parents don't have the $1,500 to really cough up the money to pay for that. It's an unfortunate situation. We lose so many kids, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, regardless of the race, the nationality, the language that they speak at home, so many kids who are below that middle class line, because even though you would think that football is a very inexpensive game, somehow in the United States we've kind of altered it to where it's a very expensive game, not just because you have to buy some decent boots and you have to buy this strip, but because you actually have to pay for all of these coaches and this structure and all of this bureaucracy that goes into it. And that's where it can be very difficult to actually be able to find a kickabout on a Saturday afternoon.
Tim, do you want to tell him about street football, how we used to kick a ball about for nothing when we were kids and block off the road?
Tennis ball.
Oh, yeah. What? You had a tennis ball? You lot were rich, man.
You dreamt of a tennis ball.
We were kicking rocks about, man.
It does seem very strange, doesn't it? This pay for I loved Sean's point there that the states have managed to transform the cheapest game into something that's very expensive. And is no one attacking this in the States, Sean?
Tim, that's a great question. And people at the U.S. Soccer Federation, at Major League Soccer, at United Soccer Leagues, which operates the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th divisions, at WPS, the new Women's Pro League, quietly they'll tell you this is a huge problem, but I've been around MLS since day one, year one, in 1996. 2 years prior to that, I was an indoor soccer commentator, six-a-side. So I've been really a commentator and around this game on a professional level since 1994. And people whinge on about it all the time, but nobody has really been able to figure out the problem. It is big business. Youth football is big business. I cannot stress that enough. You can be head of a youth club. You can have thousands of kids under you in this club system because you have a U18, a U16, a U14, and they'll have an A, B, and C out of that, boys and girls. You have this structure, and the person on top of that pyramid is pulling in potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Maybe the first team coach for the A-level boys under 18s, he might be on $60,000 or $65,000. These are people's full-time occupations. This is big money, and they're not getting federal grants for this. The people who are paying those wages are the parents of these kids. They're paying for their kids to play on these elite clubs.
Peter in Wokingham, apologies for keeping you waiting so long, because I know you're about to get married as well.
Not until September.
Oh, well, congratulations in advance.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have an amazing fiance. It's agreed that I can even go to a football match. We're going on our honeymoon to Argentina, so I've got a couple of questions for Tim around Argentinian football and...
Well, hang on a second. You're going to go on your honeymoon to Argentina and take your missus to a football match?
She suggested it.
Fair enough.
She knows I like Boca, and she said, if you want to go and see Boca, that's perfectly okay.
I think you're going to be happily married.
Yeah, exactly. She sounds like a keeper, yeah.
So I wasn't going to argue. When the tickets get sort of when fixtures release dates for the Apertura season released, I can talk in English.
The current season comes to an end of May, start of June.
Yeah.
And then the next one will start of August.
All right, cool.
The Apertura. So the fixtures will come out in that 4-week period. If you go to the website of the Argentinian FA, which is very easy, I think it's afa.org.ar. And one of the very, very handy things about researching Argentinian football is the word for fixtures is fixtures. So that makes it very easy to check out.
It must be a relief to you, Peter. You don't have to move the date of the wedding because the football match will be taking place.
Indeed, no, we're there for 2 weeks, and I had a special day booked off for it, apparently.
Absolutely.
Are tickets expensive?
No, tickets are by English standards ludicrously cheap, and they've just gone up. But normal kind of terrace admission is, for under a tenner, something like that. And so by English standards, it's ludicrously cheap. It can be difficult to get tickets for places like Boca. To be honest, I'm a terrible person to ask ticket questions because, I've had the sanctuary of the press box now for too long. If there's a problem, there are, and you'll see this in hotels. There are organisations, kind of travel agencies and so on, that organise taking groups of tourists to the game, where clearly you pay much, much more than your average supporter is going to play. They do scalp you, but they do guarantee entry and get you to and from the game safely. There are one or two worrying things about. There is a problem of football violence, and one of the things that Argentinian football has done has cut back on the number of visiting supporters. In lower divisions, I think second division, there are no visiting supporters allowed at all. First division, they've cut back on the number of visiting supporters who are allowed. There's a big inconvenience factor because they tend to hold the home supporters after the game. They let the visiting supporters out, and they'll hold the home supporters for a good half an hour, which can be something of an inconvenience. But there's also a scheme just coming in. It's being piloted along the lines of that dreadful identity card scheme that was floated in England a while back. There's a club in Argentina which will be piloting that scheme. I think it's next month. Lanús are going to be having a look at that. There's talk about that kind of scheme being applied in Brazil as well, which just strikes me as an absolute bureaucratic nightmare that's going to make life difficult for the common supporter, and not probably difficult at all for the hooligan. So that's a potential problem that these horrible identity card things might well come in. But in that case, if you go with the organised group arranged by a travel agency, they'll sort all of that out for you.
Okay, is it quite safe or not really? Because I'm used to Serie A. I go to Serie A a lot, and obviously that's not the friendliest league in the world.
Well, as I say, there is a serious problem with football violence.
Yeah.
I would advise not carrying anything on your person that you're not prepared to lose.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you might even want to take your wedding ring off.
I was going to say your missus. You might not want to lose that.
It might turn out to be a valuable weapon, but usually the problem is just between organised groups of fans. You can be the victim of muggings inside the stadium. It does happen. But one of the plus points of going to Argentina for English people is that you don't stick out necessarily as being a tourist. The Argentinians are the vast majority descended from Europe, so you don't necessarily stick out. So as long as you take basic precautions, you should be fine. But there is a problem with football violence. It mainly is between organised groups of thugs or hardline supporters knocking 9 bells out of each other.
Cool, so I think it's not a good idea to wear a Boca shirt or whatever. I think it's better to be neutral.
I wouldn't. I would just go discreet.
Yeah, is that the same
obviously, if you're going to a Boca game in a Boca shirt, you've got safety in numbers there, so you should be all right. As I'm saying, they're limiting the number of away fans. But it's not something that I would do. I would be as discreet as possible.
Would that be the same for Argentina in general? In other words, if I'm just walking around Buenos Aires, is it still safer to be neutral?
I would have thought so.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Peter, thanks a lot for the call and good luck on the honeymoon, etc. I do despair for the youth of today, I really do. I mean, Alan on the A9, for example. I know you must be a youngster, Alan. And one other person, sorry, I can't remember who it was now, who texted in to tell me that Dixie Dean's owns a couple of pubs in Edinburgh. Now, that wasn't the Dixie Dean I was talking about. Do you know what I mean? Everton legend I was talking about. That's from a different generation, and sadly he died, more than a generation ago now.
He died at a game, I think. I think he had a heart attack at the Merseyside derby, Dixie Dean.
What I remember about him was middle parting in the hair. If you remember, those are the days, eh? Stephen Ilford, good morning.
Sorry to bother you, didn't it? Give you something. You just shocked me with that, because my elderly father used to play with Dixie Dean.
You're kidding me.
Right, and Race Carter.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm telling you the truth.
What, for Everton? Or for
No, he played for Hull Amateurs and he played for England, my father.
What, England is in the first team? The full professional?
Yeah.
What's your father's name?
It was an England Amateurs team, and then he went up to the first team at the end of it. I'm trying to remember. He just hit me with names at the end of it, who was in charge of it.
Yeah, but what was your dad's name?
Bernard Goulding, Goulding.
Well, congratulations.
He was a right winger. He played for the RAF and Combined Services. He went out into India. He scored the only goal against England Combined Services against India. And he said to me at the end of it, he laughed. He said, "Do you know why we won? No, why? We had football boots. They had nothing."
Yeah, it makes a difference, doesn't it? Especially when you step on their toes.
Right, exactly. But he did. He played. I'm not being funny. Honestly, I would not say that. That just shocked me.
No.
At the end of it, that really did shock me. But he
I don't have any reason to doubt you whatsoever, Steve.
Right, Race Carter. I mean, he knew. He trained with some of the Manchester United kids that got killed in the Munich disaster. Honestly, not pulling your leg. I've got photographs to prove it. Honestly, sit here.
You know, photographs don't work on radio. You do know that, don't you?
I know, mate. But I want to with Tim Vickery. But that really did shock me, because Dixie Dean was the most fantastic centre forward at the end of it, and the other one was Nat Lofthouse.
Absolutely, and he's still around. He's still going to the games as well.
Absolutely outstanding. My dad said anything in the air was absolutely terrific. Now, at the end of it, equally, my dad played against, do you remember the comedian Charlie Williams?
Yeah.
He played centre-half at Doncaster Rovers.
That's right, yeah.
And my dad played football against him. He said he was a lovely bloke, terrific. Hard as nails, though. He'd knock you up in the air. A bit like you, Don.
Yeah. No, as you know, I'm doing my Ronaldo impersonation
because
tonight.
I can remember you when I was kicking a stone in a playground, and you come along and put me, at the end of it, out of doing PE for 2 weeks.
I'm sure that's a wind-up.
It's a wind-up.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
At the end of it, my main question at the end of it, please, for your panel, is that Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini, both of them have been very honest whatsoever of saying and trying to knock the Premiership. Not only that, at the end of it, they've poo-pooed the unfortunate lad in Roma that at the end of it was stabbed, the Arsenal fan. right? And they poo-pooed the fact at the end of it that obviously the final's taken place in Roma, right? And it has been, and it has happened to us, right? Liverpool, Manchester United, all of our teams at the end of it, right? Honestly, on a knife edge. When it comes to like the Italian teams and stuff like that, they're fantastic. They can do whatever they seem to be doing, what they like. Fine. Notwithstanding of that, he at the end of it is condemned the Premiership, which we know, and it has been on, and it's been recorded, is it's the most fantastic recorded programmes. Now, Tim Vickery...
Okay, no, we know all of that, Steve. I'm just looking at the clock here, so tell us what exactly is the question. Go ahead.
The question is, why, at the end of it now, footballers from Argentina, Brazil, right, worldwide, and I'll come back even to Sean, America as well, are not looking to France or Spain or anywhere like that. The plaudits that used to be, they're looking at the Premiership.
Yeah, because it's the most successful of all. And the question?
Yeah, and the question is, why, I can't understand why, obviously, Ferguson being Manchester United at the end of it, being on board with Sepp Blatter. Sepp Blatter has said at the end of it that he will only have 5 overseas players within his team.
Okay, well, we took this last week, and we're going to try and get an answer for that as well. We did do it at much length last week, but we're going to get an answer for it. You've run out of time there as well, Steve. It's only time for me to say this. I've just had one text message. We'll do it straight after the news and sport, but text message from Andy and Barry. Just finished work, not sure if I've been beaten to it, but has Sean heard that Eddie Johnson finally scored for Cardiff? The cheer when it hit the net was the same when we scored at Wembley in the semi-final. He's become a cult figure. We really want him to score loads by the end of the season and justify staying. Had you heard that, Sean?
I had. I did a match, both matches actually 2 years ago in MLS. Eddie Johnson scored 6 goals in 2 league matches, back-to-back hat tricks. He basically did nothing else for the next 2 months. That right there is the career of young Eddie Johnson.
And Ian in Glasgow tells us that Michael Keaton was also a star of Shot at Glory, yeah?
It's Michael Keaton, Robert Duvall, and Ali McCoist, which is a bizarre triumvirate. But I think Robert Duvall does the best Scottish accent of all of them. Aye, the new.
We'll come back to talking about world football in a moment or two.
On DAB Digital Radio, digital TV, downloads and online.
This is 5 Live.
Michaela Howard has the 5 Live News.
Detectives are looking into claims that a London taxi driver found guilty of drugging and sexually assaulting 12 women could have more than 80 victims. John Warboys from Rotherhithe in South East London is thought to be one of the most prolific sex offenders in the UK. He was a licensed Hackney cab driver. Finance ministers from around the world are meeting in West Sussex this weekend to try to agree a common approach to tackling the global economic downturn.
Rugby Union Leicester topped the Guinness Premiership after a 23-17 victory at the bottom side Bristol. Martin Gillingham was at the Memorial Stadium.
It was a game that hinged on a moment of quick thinking from Leicester's replacement scrum half, Ben Youngs. With time running out and trailing by 4 points, Leicester were awarded a penalty just inside the Bristol half. Youngs opted for a quick tap, exploiting a gaping hole in defence, most of whom still had their backs to him. 2-on-1, Youngs drew the defender and sent Dan Hipkiss over, and it settled the game. So Leicester go top, but victory came at a price. Already depleted by injuries, international call-ups and suspension, they lost 3 more players tonight. Julian Dupuis, Matt Smith and Marco Wenzel all left the field in the first half.
In Super League, there were wins for the leaders Leeds and St Helens, and Andy Murray's back from illness with a win. He and doubles partner Ross Hutchins won their opening match at the ATP Masters 1000 event in Indian Wells.
Fighting Talk.
So much sport and so little time to tear it to shreds.
But on Monday, 5 Live brings you The Real Fighting Talk, a day of features and reports about the British Armed Forces.
5 Live Breakfast.
From 6 a.m.
Nikki and Sheila reveal the results of an exclusive poll on the British military. Throughout the day, we'll hear from serving soldiers in Iraq. We'll talk to families left in Britain. We'll find out how they cope. And then from 4 p.m,
5 Live Drive.
With Peter Allen and Anita Anand.
I'll be live from Catterick, the largest garrison in the UK, with new recruits and army personnel who've returned from the war zone. The Real Fighting Talk, all day Monday on 5 Live.
Sure, it seems the jury's still out on Efan Okoko, though, because Matthew in Omaha has just emailed me to say that he could have sworn that he saw him reffing in the Copa del Rey. 0500 909 693 for the World Football Phone In. Nigel in Norwich is with us. Nigel, good morning.
Good morning, Dalton. Yes, I was just a question for Sean, really. I was just wondering whether he still thinks the MLS needs the big name like Beckham to generate interest, or does he think it's generated enough interest with him being there now that the league can sort of stand alone?
I think that's an excellent question. I think it's certainly open for debate whether you follow MLS in the United States or outside of the United States, but very closely, or if you just give it a casual thought, maybe just when you hear me on this program. There is no doubt in my mind that David Beckham did wonderful things for MLS. He moved the league forward. He moved the sport of football in the United States and Canada forward. I mentioned Canada because MLS now is in Canada. Vancouver is going to be coming in the league most likely in the next couple of years. Toronto is an outstanding member. They've sold out every single match in their 2-year history, so it is a U.S. and Canadian situation. I'll talk in a moment why I don't think David Beckham is coming back, but David Beckham to come, he got people talking about football, about MLS that otherwise wouldn't. Hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions in fact, watched a match on television or bought a ticket to a match at a stadium solely because of David Beckham. Even if the league retained a tiny percentage of that number, 5%, 8%, 10%, they're still that much better for it. Now here's why I don't think David Beckham is coming back. There's been a lot of talk, and it's been a lot of, I think, journalism by press release. LA Galaxy puts out a press release, and everyone just says, oh, well, this is what's going to happen. Remember, there was going to be that deadline, and, well, they had to answer to it, and they missed it, AC Milan, and David Beckham's coming back. Oh, wait, now he's not coming back. Oh, wait, now he is coming back, and he's going to come back when the July transfer window opens on July 15th. Just look kind of dispassionately at the facts as they are. David Beckham has extended his loan at AC Milan through the end of the Serie A season. That ends on May 31st. He then would not be eligible to come back to LA Galaxy until July 15th when the summer transfer window opens. LA Galaxy then have a match away to Juan Pablo Angel and New York Red Bulls at Giant Stadium on July 16th. David Beckham is saying, well, he'll stay with LA Galaxy through the end of the MLS campaign. That could be anywhere between October 24th when the regular season ends and November 22nd, the MLS Cup final, which I think all but the most optimistic and diehard supporters of LA Galaxy think the club will be in. So somewhere between October 24th and November 22nd is what you're looking at. Then David Beckham is going to return back to AC Milan and drop right back into one of the best 2 or 3 football leagues, maybe the best football league in the world, one of the biggest clubs in the world, and is going to play through as well as playing for England. And then it's going to be summer, and then what? He's going to play for England, assuming they're through in World Cup 2010. David Beckham turns 34 years old in May. Now that's still a young man, but the position that he plays to play effectively, forget all those free kicks for a moment, he has to do a lot of running. Say this about MLS. MLS, you have to be very physical, you have to be very fit, you have to be very athletic. You're also playing on some hard pitches, some artificial pitch surfaces that aren't that great on your knees and shins and ankles and hips and backs, and you're playing through some very, very hot and humid summer days in cities like Dallas and Houston and, well, even Los Angeles, certainly Kansas City, Chicago, Columbus. With all of this taken into account now, does anybody believe that David Beckham is going to suddenly, after a 5.5-week break, swoop back into Los Angeles Galaxy at age 34, fit right back in, play MLS, and then go back to Serie A? I think this is a stall by David Beckham and his people and by LA Galaxy and Major League Soccer. It would be great for all parties involved if David Beckham comes back. I don't think that he will. You know, I just look at it like this. What is worse in football than to have a superstar player be on your club who does not want to be there? David Beckham, to me, it's mission accomplished. Maybe not on the pitch for LA Galaxy, certainly not on the pitch, in fact, for LA Galaxy, but off the pitch. He moved the sport, he moved the league forward. He's done enough. Let him go to AC Milan, forget about all of this. He's going to come back until we get another press release saying, well, he's going to wait. Maybe he'll come back when he's 38 years old. David Beckham did what MLS wanted him to do in terms of selling tickets, creating awareness in the general public and pop culture with the sport media, with the football media. I think his future lies in Italy with AC Milan, and I think that maybe if he does get England into the squad and England plays a World Cup 2010, maybe that's the end of the footballing career for David Beckham. Maybe David Beckham does come back at the end when he's 37, 38, which I thought would have been his smart move all along. That's when I thought he should have come to MLS.
Do you think MLS will be happy that he snubbed them in the way that he has?
No, they're absolutely not happy. You know, my friend Alexi Lawless, the former U.S. international who actually helped orchestrate to Beckham deal. He's since been relieved of his duties. If I didn't like him so much, I would say he was sacked as president of LA Galaxy while Beckham was there. But Alexi Lawless on the BBC said David Beckham is going to be booed. There's this feeling almost, I think, of betrayal, where you said you were going to do this, this, and this, and you said you were going to be committed to football, and you were going to help the sport grow. What happened? Why are you turning your backs on this? I think that's a naive view. Look at any big club in the world. Look at their squad sheet from 4 years ago. Now, how many of those footballers are still there? It's the reality of football. The players come and players go. Whether you're a superstar or whether you're second choice for a lower tier side, you move. It's a transient nature to be a professional footballer. I don't think that it's a black eye at all for MLS that David Beckham was good enough to go from LA Galaxy to AC Milan. To me, that's a source of pride. The league did not handle it as well as they could have. Had they cut ties immediately, worked out a transfer deal, I think everybody would be a lot happier. Again, I think this is a stall, and I really think that it's unlikely that David Beckham will be back, or if he does come back, that he's going to play through the full MLS campaign. Maybe he comes back, he plays a couple of matches, and then he moves back to Italy when the Serie A season begins in late August or early September.
I was hoping to put through a call from one of our listeners who lives in West Africa, but we can't get back to him. But Nick in Southbourne, nevertheless, this is your question. Upcoming World Cup in South Africa, Hiral. He works in West Africa, as I said. He wants to know, will the African teams make an impact this time around? Straightforward question.
I want to say yes, but I'm not as certain as I was perhaps a year ago. I think the problem with the African teams at the moment is not the players. I think the players are there. You know, I think any one of Cameroon, Egypt, Ghana, Ivory Coast, any of these teams have the players to do something. I mean, there was a time when you used to look at the African teams and say, okay, head-to-head against a European or South American opposition, those European or South American teams have better players. I don't think that's the problem now. You look at Ghana's team, you look at Ivory Coast's team. Yeah, there are as many big-name players there as there are at any European country. Or South American team for that matter. I think the problem really still lies in organisation and perhaps even coaching stability. I don't know if that's been sorted out yet, and I think that's going to hinder the African teams. I mean, a case in point, Ghana under Claude Loire, their former coach, were a team to be reckoned with, a real force. You know, Loire is a superb coach for African teams because he understands the continent. He's never a tourist coach. He always lives in the country that he coaches. He was in Congo, despite the fact that a lot of people around him said it wasn't a good idea. But that never stopped him. But he's no longer Ghana's coach, and you were thinking that he would have been a great person to lead a team like Ghana at the World Cup. Now, current coach Rejovac could do something for Ghana, but the problem is I just don't see that stability in all these teams, the coaching stability which is conducive towards a team being really successful, and I think that could hinder them. So we all hope that the African teams will do something in their own continent, but
we don't all hope. There'll be people who support other teams. I wonder, how serious are these African footballing nations then? Because this must be clearly the greatest opportunity for an African team to win the World Cup. If they can't win it on their own home soil, it's going to take a long time before they win it anywhere else.
No, I think they are serious, but I think to a certain extent their hands are tied just by the availability of coaches for African teams. I think. I don't think
it's got to be a foreign coach.
No, I know, and I don't think that's the case either. I just think that even the local coaches tend not to have the time or sort of the necessary resources, or more importantly the administrative support to do their jobs properly.
The problem is higher up. It's not the coaches.
Yeah,
I mean it's the footballing authorities then.
Yes,
arguably the national governments.
That is true. You see, I think it's everything but the players, I'd say. Yeah,
right.
And that being said, though, you've seen that if an African team has the organizational support, they can do wonders at a tournament. So that, with all that I've just said, I still think that it is possible that an African team could go deep into the tournament.
Glenn in Portadown in Northern Ireland. Good morning.
2 questions for Tim, if that's all right.
Yes, Glenn, go ahead.
The first one's about Marco Anzalori, but you can come back to it. The second one's about the Copa Libertadores.
Sorry, I'm struggling. You have to give me you have to cut me some slack here. I've been away for 15 years, and I'm struggling with the accent. Can you say it again a bit more slowly? Sorry, mate.
The question is about the Copa Libertadores.
I understood that. That was great.
They're halfway through the group stage, and
coming up here. Yeah.
Who do you think has an outside chance for the Brazilian and Argentina teams? You know, I have been impressed with Coca-Cola. You know, the thrust LDU 3-0 last night, and also beat Palmeiras.
It's a terrific question, and I would say, who can beat the Brazilians? Now, there's a worrying statistic from the Argentinian point of view, and River Plate last won it in 1996. Since then, Boca are the only Argentinian club to reach the final, and they've done it on many occasions, but no one else has done it. And in that time, 10 different Brazilian clubs have reached the final. And Brazil is taking the Libertadores much more seriously than it ever did before. And because we now have the league system in Brazil, the best Brazilian teams are qualifying. And if you just look at the early results, and the Argentinian teams, their combined records so far, they've won 5, drawn 2, and lost 6. They're struggling a little bit, you know, all of them. None of them are looking, Boca haven't really replaced Datalo, who was an important player for them. River Plate are in a mess, just beginning perhaps to find themselves. San Lorenzo, who I thought might have might be the best challenge from Argentina, have lost their 2 away games. They've got problems with their goalkeeper. Lanús are in problems in their group. Estudiantes are not a particularly good side. There's no one for Verón to play with. Looking round the teams from the other countries, well, that's 2 terrific results, as you mentioned, from Colo-Colo. They lost their first game at home to a Brazilian side, Sport of Recife. But then a terrific win away to Palmeiras, and an excellent win at home to the reigning champions, LDU of Ecuador, who are not anywhere near the same side as the one that won it last year. Colo-Colo have changed their formation a little bit. They're a team who, over recent years, they've been embedded in a kind of 3-4-1-2 formation. They've changed it to more of a 4-4-2 with a diamond midfield, and there's a guy there, Colombian McNally Torres, who passes the ball wonderfully well. And the striker, the Argentinian striker, Lucas Barrios, is a guy who, mid-20s now, this is his first real big team. He's travelled around all over the place. He's never, and he's always scored goals. But when you look at him, you can see why big teams have been a bit reluctant to take a chance on him, because he's not very elegant. He's quite a big guy, and he looks like he's running in Wellington boots. But he's a goal scorer, and he's doing well. Personally, I think Colo-Colo in the long run are going to prove too weak defensively to mount a serious challenge. I'm looking round at the moment, and I'm finding it very hard to find teams that I think can really give the Brazilians a run for their money. Nacional of Uruguay have started very well. Now, it's years since Uruguay have done anything in their tournaments. Nacional have their youth development work has been terrific recently. There's several really good young players coming through, but I can't really see them going all the way. Libertad of Paraguay have started well. They've won their 3 games. But I think they've had a little bit of luck, and I can't imagine them chasing a game. If they're 1-0 down away from home, I think that might prove a little bit difficult for them. So at the moment, I can't see anyone really beating the Brazilians. We'll have to see. There's a long way to go. We're nearly halfway through the group stage, but at the moment, I think the Brazilians are out in front and by a considerable margin.
Yeah, give us a call next week. We'll take the first part of the question when Tim's learned some accents in that time. Andrew in Blackheath, good morning.
Morning, gentlemen. Dodson, nothing about my other passions, not to give you a heart attack. Just a simple football question. I was going to ask Sean about Beckham, but he, a few moments ago, answered it extremely well. So,
do you mind if I say something about our other passion very quickly?
Go on then.
Last week I was forced to take the little ones to go and see Barnet.
Yeah.
And after Barnet finally won, 3-1. The last thing I heard in the stadium before I went out, and the championship results, the latest, this is what I heard, this is like 4:45. They tell me what the latest is.
in Watford against Charlton.
Now.
The latest was 2-1. And I was like, what do you mean the latest? We've lost. We've lost. Why don't you say it? Sorry, was it 3-2 or whatever it was? Anyway, they said the latest, the 3-2, and I was like, for goodness sake.
Well, I was at that game, and it was a shame because they play well, they just can't keep it up. So we will be one of the little teams next season. As I
That's
said
been our
last
problem
week.
all season, isn't it? We can't keep it up, and it's such a simple thing to do, you'd have thought.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And we get no sympathy. Well, I know we haven't got much time, so Tim, a quick question about a couple of South American
We're getting down,
players.
though, you know that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Just
Tim,
thought I'd
first
say
of
that.
all, Sergio Aguero has been very openly critical of his coach at Atletico Madrid, Abel Racino, saying that he picks the wrong team, that he played him up front on his own, and Forlan should have been playing. That's why they didn't get through in the Champions League against Porto. Surely, if he's so critical, it's either he's got to go or the coach has got to go. And the other one, very interesting, Ronaldo scored a couple of goals for Corinthians. He's keen to get back in the Brazilian team. Dunga says, well, if he keeps playing well, he might have a chance. And by the way, is he got a toupee or is that his real hair? He's suddenly got lots of hair.
That's his real hair. I'm surprised he's keeping it because it's been very hot in Brazil. I thought he might go for the shave job, but I think he's kept his hair because he's so big now that if he were to shave it off, I think he would look a little bit like the creature from the Black Lagoon.
I'm so used to seeing him bald, I thought, oh my God, I think he's got a toupee on.
Yeah, Sergio Aguero, I didn't see the game in midweek, the Porto.
I did, he was completely played out of the game.
But it seemed a very strange decision from the Atletico Madrid coach. When they needed to score, they had to score in order to qualify. When you've got a front partnership that works as well as Forlan and Aguero together, to keep Forlan on the bench from the start of the game, I thought was a strange option. And Aguero obviously frustrated, and you would have thought that might mean that elimination might well mean that he will move on from Atletico Madrid in the close season. Ronaldo he scored on Sunday. He came on as a substitute, and second minute of injury time, he scored with a header from a corner. He doesn't score many headers, but from a corner that got his team a draw in a big local derby. So the fans really, really loved that. And then he started in midweek, and he scored a terrific goal, a lovely goal. Ball played across, and he just hit it first time on the swivel and buried it. And no one's going to forget how to play football. The talent is there. Physically, whether he can keep it up, well, that's another question. You worry about his knees because he is heavy and he's putting a lot of pressure on those knees. Now, Corinthians won't play him this week, this weekend. They won't play him, so they're trying to take it easy with him. You can really see in the reaction to all this just how Brazilian football misses its idols, because just scoring these two goals has meant the whole country has gone Ronaldo mad. And when he scores a goal now, it's interrupt all the TV programs to watch his goal. When he goes to clean his teeth, it's big news. And he's saying himself that he thinks all of this kind of media hullabaloo is a little bit too much. And it cost him a black eye in his first game back, when he came off the bench and didn't score, but did a couple of reasonable things. Just the scrum of reporters attacked him at the end of the game, and he got a black eye from a microphone. So he's probably more scared of journalists than he is of opposing centre backs at the moment. But I think he's old enough and wise enough to know that it's not always going to be this easy. There'll be times when he'll go a few minutes without a goal, and we just hope that he stays fit, because if he stays fit, then he is someone who's so naturally talented, and maybe he still can achieve something in the game. But over recent years, and going back 5 years or so now, he's never been able to get a sequence of games going. It's always seemed to me that when he's fit, he's very close to a breakdown. It's a very narrow zone that he's in. So that's the main thing, I think, to follow with this latest comeback. Number one, can he stay fit? Number two, will he behave himself off the field? Will he be able to make the sacrifices, to lay off the beer, to lay off the late nights, to lay off chasing women and so on? Will he be able to behave like a professional footballer 24 hours a day?
Chasing women, you say? Andrew, thanks very much. Can he tuck his shirt in or outside his shorts nowadays?
Well, he likes to leave it to leave it outside.
He has to. That's what I said about I'm doing my Ronaldo impersonation today. Because do you remember that extra large shirt you got for me, the Vasco da Gama one? Well, now it's a tight fitting, very tight fitting.
I knew Steve from Ilford. I knew it was a wind-up when he said that you did him in PE and he had to miss PE for 2 weeks. Because if you'd done him seriously, he'd have been out for a lot longer than 2 weeks.
I'm a big guy. Finley and I'm not that big though. Finley in Ellen sends an email for you, Sean. What can you tell me about Cleveland Railhawks as ex-Aberdeen and Scotland defender Brian Irvine is set to take up a coaching job with them?
It's actually Carolina Railhawks. They're a second division side. They're owned by a really, really good football man. Used to be in charge of, what a great name, Rochester Raging Rhinos. His name is Chris Economides. He's a friend of mine, so I'm happy to mention Chris and his club. This will be their third year ever. Actually, in their inaugural year, they reached the semifinal round of our domestic cup competition in the U.S., the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. They play in the Raleigh-Durham area. The city's actually Cary. It's all one big area in North Carolina. It's maybe 2 hours outside of Charlotte, which is the biggest city in North Carolina. They played a really nice little football stadium that seats about 8,000. If you're in that area, it's fun to see a match. I was talking about Miami Blues FC earlier. It's that league. It's the U.S. Second Division. Actually, technically, the U.S. Canadian Second Division, one level below MLS. Yeah, Carolina Railhawks in Cary, North Carolina.
Savchenko wants to know, Uxbridge Massive, which 5 teams, and I think he means which 5 African teams do you think will get to the World Cup? Because they're doing their qualifications later this month, aren't they?
Yes. I think it'll be the big teams, but I was specific.
And what are those big?
Well, the Cameroon, Ghana, Ivory Coast. But I'm looking at Egypt, to be honest. I'm looking at Egypt to make it to this World Cup and to make an impact, because Egypt, for me, always seem to underachieve when it comes to World Cup qualification and obviously getting to World Cups. They've had a team which has been together for a long time. They've had all this success at African level. They've got excellent club success as well, based around the same players who are in the national team. I'm looking at Egypt to do something.
Great. Question, Sean, how long do you think, this from one of our listeners, how long do you think it will be before the US produces a world-class player?
I think they already have. I think Landon Donovan's a world-class player. I think Brad Friedel is a world-class player. Well, Eddie Johnson is this week in Cardiff anyway, isn't he? I think we are. If you're talking about getting somebody on the Cristiano Ronaldo level, I think that's realistic in the next 10 years, maybe 5. I think they're definitely out there.
Tim, what do you think of Giovanni Dos Santos, the Mexican star? Asked Nick in Ipswich, or should that be a question for Sean?
Go on, Tim.
Well, I think he's just been loaned to Ipswich.
That's right.
Which I'm disappointed that he's had so few chances at Tottenham. I saw him on the way up, very, very excited by his talent. I even saw him pre-season with Tottenham and was excited by the things I was hoping that he was going to do this year. So I still think he's an absolutely huge talent, and this is terrific news for fans of Ipswich Town.
Linville wants to support a team in Madagascar because his surname is Fossa, and that's where Fossas live. Apparently less than 400 left in the wild. Are there any teams out there that play in black and white like Newcastle, his beloved Newcastle?
I tell you what, if he ever finds out, please let me know.
Okay.
Aren't lemurs' tails black and white? They're from Madagascar.
Yeah,
support lemurs.
Yeah. And Sean, very quickly, how has Landon Donovan been doing in his loan period in Germany?
It didn't go as well as he had hoped. He's a friend of mine, as well as I had hoped. I was hoping that MLS's loss would certainly be Landon Donovan's gain. He was going to stay in the Bundesliga, but the loan deal expired as of last Monday. He's back with LA Galaxy, where he'll start the season.
Tim, you know about the Chilean team called Everton? Stuart in Liverpool asked.
They're in the Copa Libertadores at the moment, and although they got a draw this week, they've got 4 points from 3 games. I really don't think they're very good. If anyone's over in Chile, it's a terrific team to go and see, because they come from Viña del Mar, which is a beachside resort, and it's one of the most scenic grounds I've ever watched football at. But I think perhaps the view is perhaps better than the quality of football.
And thanks for all the jokes about Charlton. Unfortunately, it ran out of time. I couldn't read those out. They're a bit not suitable for radio, if you see what I mean. But very funny. I'm laughing all the way to the First Division. Thanks very much to the Uxbridge Massive, to the Wikipedia, and also, of course, to the Big Wheel.
On DAB Digital Radio, Digital TV, downloads and BBC iPlayer.
This is 5 Live.
It's 4 o'clock. Good morning. Michaela Howard has a 5 Live news.
Police say they want